Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk for America.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now, with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events with confidence.
National Streaming Sports is brought to you in part by BetUs.com, designed for true fans. NFL odds, Week 1 and futures, college football odds, including Heisman Trophy favorites and playoff odds, NBA odds of division winners and playoffs, Major League Baseball playoff and World Series odds, the National Hockey League Conference playoffs and Stanley Cup odds, and boxing wagers. Betting opportunities include versus the spreads and outright winners, also during the game. Use our link on our website, nessp.info, the Bet Us Opportunities webpage, for a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits. Must be 21 years old, and remember, bet responsibly.
Good morning and welcome to the Sunday Morning Big Sports Show. I am sitting in for Mac today. Shout out to Mac and Linda, the great host over at Roku. Download the Roku app so you too can be in the know with sports 24/7 without the cost of cable. I am joined this morning by Keith Engel, TGI Sports. Good morning, Keith. How are you?
Good morning, Sonia. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you, Jack Hirsch of the Glove Fist and the Mac and Jack Show. Good morning, Jack. How are you? And we are joined this morning by addition to our family, B. Strilla from the 1A Cheek 3 Toes podcast and Friday Night with the Fellas. B. Strilla, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How you fellas doing, ladies?
I am doing well, and I hope you all are too. Happy Sunday. Let me set this up. Looks like we got some circular motion going on. What'd you say, Keith?
I just got to tell you, Bistrella's got the best podcast name in the history of podcasts. That's awesome.
He does. Notice how I always censor it. But
I don't know how long. I don't know how long I'm gonna be able to carry it, Keith. Though
you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
So, good morning, one and all. Keith, we're going to start with you because we know that you hop off around the 8:30 hour to start your own show, Stream of Consciousness. That's at 8:30 a.m. on Sunday mornings. And March Madness has been nothing short of its mantra. March Madness, all I care about is that Duke is still in, but enlighten us, Keith.
It's been interesting. I mean, obviously one of the we had an interesting matchup with Rick Pitino and Coach Cal yesterday, Arkansas and St. John's, and I didn't give Arkansas much of a chance to actually get past Kansas, and they played very, very well. They played well down the stretch, and yesterday they played good defense. St. John's shot themselves in the foot by not shooting the ball very well. And interesting, Rick Pitino left his best player, the Big East Player of the Year, Luis, on the bench for the last 5 minutes, which he was questioned about endlessly after the game.
Yes.
But in his defense, the kid just didn't play well. He was 3 for 17 during the game, and I think he just played the best what he thought was the best chances to tie that game. They tried to stay in it. It's shocking to me they stayed in the game as long as they did, shooting about 30% for the game. So that was a big surprise. BYU is a bit of a surprise for me. And we could see a couple more surprises today I think your Duke team will be okay against Baylor, but there's been a little bit of a surprise. The Big East overall, big disappointment. UConn really the only team left, the defending two-time champions. So it's been an interesting couple of days, and I'm very tired, actually, because the game go way too late here on the East Coast.
I know. And, Keith, the thing is, you and I talked about that on your show Friday. We were talking about the surprise element, and I was like, well, where is UConn? So it's good to see that they're still hanging in there.
Yeah, they had a bit of a nail biter in round one against Oklahoma, but listen, 6 games, you get hot for 2 weeks, you can win this whole thing. And there's not a team, I would say most of these teams left, we'll see today, after today, most of the teams all those teams will have a chance to win. I don't care what your seeding is after today, you got a chance to go all the way because you got 4 games to go. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
UConn
It's going to be the big show and prove because UConn is playing number 1 Florida at 12:10 this afternoon. So that's
would be a big upset.
Big upset.
Yeah, but UConn could do anything short of winning the national championship would be a disappointment, when in reality it shouldn't be. Okay, if they got to the Final Four, it would be an amazing achievement considering the type of season they've had. But it would leave their fan base dissatisfied because they're trying to three-peat.
Get spoiled. That's what happens when you have a bit of a dynasty, right? So it's fun though. It's been a fun 3 days, and I'm looking forward to today. I don't like the way they space the games out on the weekends. I like it when it's more condensed and games overlap at least partially, and we can get through them by 8 or 9 o'clock, maybe even 10 o'clock on the East Coast. But they really stretch out these afternoon games. You only got 1 game at noon and then a game at 2:40 or whatever. So you really don't have a number of games being played simultaneously till like 6 o'clock tonight. So
start spacing them out even more as the goes on. Good morning, Richard. How are you this morning, Richard? All right, so those are the big upsets today. Of course, Baylor and Duke will be playing at 2:40. Illinois and Kentucky, the Wildcats still hanging in there at 5:15 this afternoon. And just like you said, this is the second round, and anybody, like Jack said, that's still hanging in there after today. Gonzaga barely eliminated 81-76 by number 1 Houston. I really thought that might be an upset, but looks like they're still in there. At Tennessee as well, still in there over UCLA. Thoughts on those games? Those are going to be coming up throughout this week as well.
Today, on the upset alert today, I would put Alabama. I like St. Mary's today a lot. Alabama doesn't play much defense. St. Mary's needs the help getting the ball in the basket, similar to St. John's. They play really good defense, as I mentioned Friday. Mm-hmm. And they're a veteran team, which is hard to get today. They played together quite a bit. Good guard play. It's a good team to watch. I gave you Colorado State in a similar situation Friday, and St. Mary's will be my team today to watch. But everybody should be on upset alert right now. So
Colorado State's going to be playing Maryland, number 4 Maryland, who's still hanging in there as well.
Yeah, Maryland's an interesting case. I think they're 4th. I think they got a 4 seed. Yeah, they got a 4 seed, and they're playing a number 12 Colorado. Colorado State, is playing very, very good basketball. Won the Mountain West tournament, and that's an underrated league. New Mexico came out of there. They got a fighting chance today, I think. I don't think they'll win, but I think they'll keep that game close. So I think lost my train of thought here.
It might upset them.
The Mountain West could end up theoretically with 3 teams in the Sweet 16 here if New Mexico and Colorado State were to pull upsets today. I wouldn't think all 3 will get in, but watch Colorado State today as well. Don't like it as much as St. Mary's on that upset side though.
I know B. Strilla has a bracket. What's your bracket looking like in correlation with Keith's narrative here, B. Strilla? How you doing?
My narrative, by the way, just before you go, my bracket's blowing up, so that tells you how much my narrative is worth. So go ahead.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I wouldn't put much strength in my bracket either.
I have the winner left. That's the only team in the Final Four I think I have left is Michigan State.
Well,
you said Duke was already going to be out?
Oh, I do have him in the Final Four tape. Sorry, I do have 2 teams in the Final Four. That's it. 2 are out.
Okay.
Sorry, Buster. Go ahead.
yeah, I'm at 51% percentile, so yeah, I'm pretty much crashed. Gonzaga did it for me, basically taking out my whole side there because they lost in that game. I gotta give kudos to Houston on that game because they played very well. It wasn't as close as you think it was. It got close near the end, but it really wasn't that close. Houston played very well in that game, so I was quite surprised.
Another team that plays really good defense and has a little trouble scoring, but they're full strength now, so they're a good team to watch going forward here. Of the number ones.
Yeah, they might have the best chance too. Out of the number ones, I feel. Other than that, that's about that's about my bracket in the term right there.
It was a case of Gonzaga being unfortunate enough to play Houston, really, who's possibly going to win it all. And they played them so tough. Had Gonzaga played anyone else, I mean, who knows?
Yeah, y'all know I have Duke to go all the way. So that one year I was telling Bistrilla about that, and I think Keith too, that one year I picked them to go all the way and they got eliminated like the second round. I was disgusted because, once you pick the winner of everything and that person's eliminated, your whole bracket is done.
Yeah, your whole bracket is done. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that pain right now for sure.
Yeah. So do you do the bracket that has like the percentage on it, Keith, or you? Just...
Yeah, mine's only at like 36. It's horrible.
Oh, Strilla, pull mine and see if mine started ranking yet, Strilla. All right.
Nah, yours still hasn't pulled up a percentage yet.
Oh, they are so lame. So I entered mine late, right, guys? Bistrilla knows that I had a handwritten one, and I decided to do an online one after the same day, that night of the first round. And they won't count them now. Like it's almost.
They probably won't. Yeah. Is it ESPN who using?
No, the NCAA.
Oh, okay.
Bracket. Yeah.
They won't count any of them. I guess because I got in late. That's crazy. We'll have to hand grade it.
Because technically you cheated, but anyway.
Oh my goodness.
By NCAA standards of the bracket, you put all your teams in after they have won, even though you had it right on your sheet. But they don't recognize that.
Yeah,
so the NCAA doesn't penalize anybody but you, Sonia. Well, they'd let everybody get away with everything, right. The NCAA but you. So you're being held to a higher standard.
Yeah, and if not, we can always hand grade it. So Strilla, you could just hand grade mine. Who should we be on the lookout today? Is going to be the most probably highly visible game that everybody's going to be really watching, keeping an eye out for today, Keith.
Well, Duke Baylor will be a big game, obviously. I think let's see, where am I here? New Mexico, Michigan State, I think is a big game. I don't know who CBS got at 12 o'clock. I mean, the 12 and 12:40, they have, I think, a exclusive window before you can go to Max and all that, where you can get all the games. I think CBS has an exclusive window for those first 2 games. Yeah,
it's so weird the way it's like you got to figure out. I kind of miss the old days with that, like CBS, NBC, ABC, Fox in the story. And Fox is kind of still newer as well. At least from my age, we didn't have Fox growing up. I don't remember when it came about, but the other 3 were there. Now you got all these streaming services. You got to try to figure out where to find something. It's just a lot. So
it's Oregon, Arizona. Wouldn't that be the most?
That's a good game.
Yeah.
That's a good game for sure. Yeah. What time is that game? That game is at 9:40 tonight. So they're out west. So
the last game, yep.
That game's on TBS at 9:40. That's a tough game for me to make it through tonight after 3 straight nights of being up till 1 o'clock.
Yeah, pity the person who has to work the traditional 9 to 5. Richard is saying the Florida UConn game, and that's what I'm thinking too, because Florida's number 1, UConn is the defending champions. I mean, you gotta pour into that,
What window's that in? That might be that 12 o'clock game, is it?
That's the 12:10. Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, that'll be a good early game to settle in and take a nap and watch, I think.
Yeah, that's kicking off the whole day of entertainment. So we definitely keeping an eye on March Madness, of course. NFL news. Any news with your Patriots right now, Keith?
Well, a couple of things. They're talking to Stefon Diggs now. I don't see him coming in here personally, because I don't think he's the type of personality I want in my wide receiver room with a young quarterback, but they're talking to him. And maybe bigger news is in the last week, there's a lot of chatter that with that fourth pick, they may go for a wide receiver, McMillan out of Arizona, and get off. Unless, again, Travis Hunter falls to 4, all bets are off. They'll take Travis Hunter. But it was pretty much a consensus before this that they would take the tackle, one of the tackles, most likely Campbell out of LSU at 4. But there's a lot of chatter getting louder about McMillan out of Arizona in that 4 spot.
Yeah, that's gonna be really big, and I mean, I haven't heard too much chatter about the Travis Hunter noise. It's kind of like fizzling out. I guess this is the time of the draft, as it's about to be here within the next 4 weeks. Now we're down to 4 weeks. That the names kind of start trending a little downward, or the talk, all the chatter just kind of quietens down a little bit, because it's like everybody's just kind of holding their breath. Like, okay, what's it going to be? Who's going to trade at the last minute a pick? And move up. Like, we have that all the time, even the night of the draft. That'll still be.
Yeah. There's a lot. There's so many moving pieces right now, right? With the 2 quarterbacks not really being, true top 10 picks in most people's minds, but at least one of them, if maybe 2, if Sanders doesn't fall, could still be picked in the top 5. We don't know. The injury to Carter at Penn State, the edge rusher, is kind of thrown another, wrench into this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know. I mean, Travis Hunter, as you were talking about, he could go anywhere. He could go from 1 to 4. We don't know because of all those unknowns. And then you're going to have somebody maybe try to move up the board, which they probably shouldn't for one of these quarterbacks. I doubt the Giants will now, but because of, signing, not that Winston's going to take them, to the promised land. But they could potentially now wait on one of the more valued quarterback picks later on and not take a chance on, setting the franchise back further by making a mistake with a quarterback early in this draft. A lot of interesting questions. It's not, again, we talked about it the other night, right? It's not a talent rich draft, but it's very interesting because of specific teams' needs and where they are and who might move and whether these quarterbacks get overdrafted or they fall back. It's an intriguing draft, if not a really talented one.
That was really interesting to see Jameis Winston sign with the New York Giants. I'm just like, for what?
He'll give him some exciting plays and then, turn the ball over with stupid interceptions. But, so if you want a little more excitement, it's fine. And he might give you a couple more wins, but I don't know if he's been to the playoffs. I don't think he has.
Remember.
Unless I'm mistaken, 1 year in Tampa Bay.
Yes,
they
30 for 30.
Yeah, they haven't won any playoff games for sure. So, you're not going to the Super Bowl with Jameis Winston, but that's not the goal here, right? They're looking for a bridge to get to their next quarterback, and it's whether it's going to be taking one too soon or waiting for one of the value picks like Dart or even Kyle McCord you might get in the 4th round here, who I think is really going to get underdrafted and have a chance to be a player in this league.
Well, you get the feeling the Giants like someone who they can get in the 2nd round.
I think so.
Late in the 1st round.
Yeah.
I mean, you could judge who's going to do what by the offseason moves. Tennessee hasn't addressed their quarterback situation, and they don't have to if they want to draft Cam Ward because they have the 1st pick in the draft. So it seems obvious that they're going to draft Cam Ward at this point. Then it starts becoming fun. Is Cleveland really going to settle on Kenny Pickett to be their quarterback going forward? Yeah, you don't know, but it's so tempting. You draft Abdul Carter and pair him with Myles Garrett. I mean, I think 2 monsters on your defensive line.
100%. And again, that's one of the intrigues for me, Jack. And guys, this is, I can see teams like the Giants and other teams trading back and continuing to trade back because they can stockpile some draft picks and get that quarterback later in the 1st round or in the 2nd round, as you said, and still get a pretty a guy with as much a shot to succeed, I think, as the top 2 guys.
Yeah, that's what I'm I think in a draft that really right now, because of the lack of talent in the draft overall, I think teams are just going to, if they stay at their pick, they're going to go with the best player on the board. I'm not thinking that, a lot of people think Tennessee is going to go for Cam Ward. I'm not one of those people. I don't think a quarterback's going off in the 1st round. I think they're going to go after Travis Hunter or somebody of need on that. I think they're going to keep going with my guy Mayo. I think you're going to go with him for a while, for one more year.
Tennessee's going to then have to continue on with Will Levis, and it doesn't seem like they have a great deal of faith in him. If they're not going to draft a quarterback, I mean, there are no other real options out there for them.
Well, I mean, this means that this organization will keep making mistakes at quarterback, because if they didn't do a good job getting Levis out there, why would you think that they would? Cam Ward is not I don't think either one of those quarterbacks are top 10 quarterbacks either. I don't think they're going to. It's like replacing one bad thing with another bad thing. I mean, no, we don't know what Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders is yet in pro football scheme of things. But I mean, there you go. This is what happens to franchise. They get stuck in a rut because they keep picking for need after they keep failing for need.
And good morning to Broski Bear. He's saying it's definitely not a talented draft for quarterbacks, LTs, wide receivers, which are three of the big four high-profile, high-dollar positions, with defensive ends being the fourth. It's a deep defensive end and defensive tackle draft. And thank you for joining us, Broski Bear. I mean, it's true, you guys. I mean, this is not the most exciting draft. Last year, everybody was like, you get a quarterback, you get a quarterback. I mean, you could take a quarterback in the second round and be just as happy, honestly. Now it's like slim pickings for real. And even the quarterbacks that are there are not really, on the level that we think. They either have, their own issues that everyone's afraid of, personally bringing to the team, or just the performance issues.
I wouldn't be excited about anybody but Travis Hunter, quite frankly, in the first round. That's the only guy I would get excited about bringing on my team.
The biggest fun on draft night, if you want a prediction, is going to be when Shedeur Sanders is not initially picked, and he's there at number 9 for the New Orleans Saints, who badly need their quarterback of the future, and they don't pick him. That's when the fun begins. Dion's going to start mouthing off. It's going to be all over the news. It's going to be a fun night.
I think it's possible he doesn't even show up to the draft if it looks like he's going to fall, into the late first round or something. He may not even be there draft night.
Let's do a small plug real quick. Richard, we were going to bring that up around the 8:30 hour, try to get everything Keith has going on. But this world lost a legend this week in George Foreman, age 76, passed away a couple of days ago. Yeah. Just extraordinary person, humanitarian, and of course, boxer. I'm going to go ahead and let Jack go ahead and address it.
Yeah, I mean, this deserves like a longer segment later in the show. Like, it just cut in like it's a bulletin in the middle, you know, of the NCAA tournament and the NFL draft. I mean, George Foreman, one of the iconic figures in the world of sports, certainly boxing. I mean, you think of legacies. This is a guy who's had so many different legacies when you think of it, coming out from the Olympics, waving the American flag. I mean, that's a moment that's remembered in Olympic history, 1968 Olympics in Mexico City. Then to be a part of Howard Cosell's famous call, but be on the right side of it. Down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier. One of the great sports calls, in history, and him to be a part of that. And then him to have a supporting role that was less appealing, but that he embraced, the rope-a-dope. He'd always say, I played the part of being the dope. I mean, that's a famous part, of sports culture. And they use it in other terms, too, in society. And then the comeback, being like an older guy and being used as an example, regaining the heavyweight title at the age of 45. And then it's the George Foreman grilling machine that made him known to the regular public. People might not have even known he was a boxer, some people, but they knew the name George Foreman because they get his grilling machine. And then there was the transformation in personality from a surly guy into a fun-loving, type of human. So, like, he had so many legacies. I can't think of another athlete who's had as many different legacies directly and indirectly as did George Foreman.
You made a great point, Jack. If I can make a quick comment before I get around about George Foreman. I can't remember an athlete who had the transformation from villain to hero like George Foreman, quite frankly. With that big a gap between it, apparently. I mean, I've read, and Jack, you can probably speak to this better than I can, that some of that villain role was because of who he was fighting in Ali and whatever, but that he also purposely wanted to act like Sonny Liston and standoffish with the press and with fans and whatnot, but that wasn't really his personality. Can you speak to that at all? Was that partly an act, that mean to George Foreman?
No, not in the beginning, because George Foreman was a bit of a hoodlum as a youth, okay? He got his life somewhat straightened out by going to the job course, but when he turned professional, it was under trainer Dick Sadler. And who did he work out with and spend all his time with? Sonny Liston. Towards the end of Liston's career.
Interesting.
And he kind of wanted to pattern himself after Liston, you know, to stare down, to try to act mean, but it wasn't the real him. I actually have a handwritten letter from George Foreman years ago that I kind of cherished, you know, because his publicist was getting honored at a function. We tried to get him to show up, and he wasn't answering any calls. So I sent him a personal letter telling him about the time the first professional boxing show I ever went to that he fought on. He main evented against Chuck Wepner. I made it very personal, and I guess it got to him. He wrote me a personal letter back, and he bought 5 tables that he didn't use, of course, you know, donating. He could well afford it. Reportedly, he sold his grilling company at the time for $137 million. So,
nice.
you know, made more outside of the ring than actually in it. But, you know, everyone loved George Foreman later on, but the dangers of boxing have to be pointed out with George Foreman passing away at 76. He absorbed so much punishment in the ring, the second coming of George Foreman. And even though he would talk very clearly for a while and people would point out, oh, boxing hasn't had an effect on George Foreman. I even said it on Glove Fist to Frank Laterzo as little as a couple of weeks ago. We don't know. We haven't seen him do any interviews recently, and now we know why. Yesterday I found out, you know, the last couple of years have been rough for him. You know, he was hospitalized. His family didn't want anyone to know about it. We don't know the exact cause, you know, of why he passed away, but to take all those punches in the ring when you're in your 40s, I mean, we see it in the NFL, you know, guys who play a long career. It takes a toll a lot of years later. You pass your tests immediately after, or for years after. And then what becomes of that player, that athlete? We don't see them giving any interviews, and there's things behind the scenes. And then we're hit with the bad news.
Yeah, unfortunately, definitely that. And Keith, I know you got about a minute left with us. If that, we appreciate you coming. Any closing thoughts for us this Sunday?
No, pay attention to some March Madness. And again, rest in peace and our condolences to George Foreman's family. I'm glad I got to hear a little of Jack's comments about George, because I was looking forward to a little of that this morning, and I'm sure we'll hear more in the next week. But watch the basketball and baseball. Only 4 days away.
Opening day. Thank you so much, Keith. Have a great week. You guys check him out on Stream of Consciousness coming up at 8:30 on Roku. Take care, Keith. See you
Have
soon.
a great Sunday, guys.
You too.
You too, man.
All right, Keith Engel, everybody. Jack, definitely a segue there. I'm going to put a small pin in that. Richard and everyone saying thank you so much for that, because I want to talk to you about getting that personal letter. That's a whole different thing. And so for our audience that don't know, Jack is a professional writer for the Boxing League. You held an office there, still holding office for the Boxers Writers Association. Is that right, Jack?
I was a 6-term president. You know, I'm on the board now. It's a taxing position to have, but I'm very involved still.
Definitely so. So we're going to come back to that, because like I always say, Jack is like so blessed in having such knowledge in a lot of sports.
Now, when you've been around a long time, you can't help it. You know, it comes to you. That's the advantage and disadvantage of getting older.
Well, there you go. But I consider it more of an advantage, because that's the things you share with the audience are things that I don't know, and I'm sure a lot of people don't know. And then when you have a personal touch in it, it's very intriguing and very interesting. And just carries a long way. I want to go back to a couple of comments. We're going to definitely come back to the George Foreman story. Of course, rest in peace and condolences to his family. 76, in my opinion, is still young. So just definitely keeping them in our thoughts and prayers. And thank you for asking as well, Richard. Broski Bear is talking about the draft again. He's saying it's also a deep running back draft. However, it's not a running back draft with the high end like Saquon or Bijan. It's almost like their names sound alike these days. Anyway, I mean, is there anybody, Strilla, the Lions? Have you guys have been laying low, literally like a real lion for the last few weeks? I read some rumblings about a couple of people that you guys signed, but it wasn't anything that was like a scream. What's going on in the Lions camp?
The same thing that goes on with Lions camp every time with this regime is just that they kind of stick with the players that they have. They did get Rockison as a corner, backup corner. They also got Vontae Maddox from Philadelphia as a backup corner. So they got two backup corners that are basically replacing corners, and they're basically an upgrade over the corners that we had on the back end. Vildor, I believe, went to Tampa Bay, or did he go to Miami? One of those two teams. He went Tampa Bay. So he went to Tampa Bay. I think we're going to get rid of Emmanuel Mosley, so that was where Rockison is coming in to back up. But other than that, we haven't made.
Oh, he got frozen.
Yeah, I was going to ask how.
We haven't made any. Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, losing both coordinators, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, how much is that going to hurt? Will it hurt?
Well, considering the fact that John Morton was an offensive coordinator, not successfully as one, as you know, with the Jets, and he also was the one that kind of spearheaded Ben Johnson, getting him to be an offensive coordinator because he was the guy behind him, taught him a lot of stuff. Also with Shepard, I think Shepard's going to be a better defensive coordinator eventually. Of course, when you start the season off, when you got two different types of mindsets, you're still sticking with the scheme, and you still have a solid rock as Dan Campbell, and you still have your players out there that know what to do. It shouldn't be too bad. But everybody's it's gonna be a rough start because everybody's just getting their paws in the dirt, so it's so to speak, and it shouldn't be too bad like people are making it out to be. AG is a terrific coach. I think he's going to be a terrific head coach. I don't think he's the best defensive coordinator, but he is a very good head coach. He has that head coach mindset like Dan Campbell has. So I'm thinking that maybe Shepard will be a better replacement. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. We're not going to really be able to tell until we get to that point. But I don't think it's going to be that much of a drop off. I think you're going to be missing some offensive plays that Ben Johnson brought in there, but you still have the talent there. So
is the window slightly closing on the Lions now? And it would be very unfortunate if they don't get to a Super Bowl, because if they don't get to a Super Bowl in the next couple of years, the feeling is it's going to start a rebuilding mode, or at least rebooting, the team. And they should have been there the year before last, that game against the 49ers with the lead that I don't want to say blew the lead, but, should have gotten there. And last year they had the best team in the NFL. But the injuries did pile up. But regardless of the reason, it ended, so disappointing.
Yeah, I'm not in one of those people that think of teams. I mean, either you don't have a chance to make a Super Bowl, kind of like the bottom half of the teams in the league, but during the year. But at the top half of the teams can make them. I don't believe that the Lions Super Bowl window has closed. I think that it's just another chapter. I think this is the 5th year under this regime. They need to show that they can get to that pinnacle. And, I don't really care if they get to the Super Bowl and lose, as long as they get to the Super Bowl, period.
They've never been
that was
there
shown.
in the whole history. Even the Panthers have been there. Even the Jets have been there. Twice Panthers and Jets. I mean, Cleveland hasn't been there. You think of storied franchises. Vikings haven't won one. The Bills haven't won one, but at least they were there numerous times. And the
Right.
Detroit Lion, I felt the Detroit Lion fan base last year was as good as any fan base I ever saw in the NFL. The amount of energy, you didn't see it anywhere else. And to lose to the Washington Commanders,
That was a shocker.
the Commanders, I could understand getting to the NFC Championship game and getting upset by the Eagles in the close game, but to the Commanders and the rookie quarterback to boot.
It was one of those cases where I think Washington, Jaden Daniels is one of those quarterbacks that he's going to be one of those once in a lifetime quarterback. I can see it already in the way he plays. He's a very calm, cool, collected guy. And he moved through even though they got killed by Philadelphia, which, was bad. But I think the Lions really kind of shot themselves in the foot with the turnovers. You can't have 5 turnovers in a playoff game and expect to win. That's never going to happen. So it was just a bad outing. It's one of those I caught it like one of those Bobby Lane things where it's a curse. It's like they get to a certain point and then they lose. It's like they're great and then like that San Francisco game, for instance, like the San Francisco divisional game, our conference championship, where they had a great first half, and then it's like the second half they imploded. So it's just those things that the Lions have to get over. Either they got to do a seance over Bobby Lane's grave or something. Something's got to happen here. So when they get in the postseason, they can be more successful. I don't think the team is bad at all. I think
they're very good.
No.
The Lion fans loved Jared Goff at least a year ago, okay? Have things cooled off just a little bit? Because in my view, he's a pretty competent quarterback. But there's a big difference between saying someone is a very competent quarterback and being a really good quarterback.
Well, in the NFL these days, a lot of people put a lot of onus on the quarterback, which rightly in some cases you should. But if you have a capable offense and that can be ran, with the players that they have, typically you can stick any quarterback in that offense right now and they'll be successful. If you remember the game against Washington when Goff went out with a concussion, which he should have stayed out, Teddy Bridgewater came in there and got them right down the field. The offense is not the problem. It's like I said, Goff had a bad day, and he's been to the Super Bowl before. So that narrative with people can stop right at that point, because he was in his second, third year as a NFL quarterback and got to the Super Bowl. Yeah, they didn't win the Super Bowl; they played the Patriots, but still, he got to the Super Bowl.
They got 3 points in that game in the Super Bowl. 3 points.
Yeah.
Goff was overmatched.
Yeah, let me grab
and that may be true. However, there was a couple of passes in the end zone that were dropped. And the guy that we had for a while, Josh Reynolds, was his receiver back then as well. And he dropped a couple of key passes, kind of like he did in the NFC Championship. And that's kind of like, well, he ain't here no more. But, those things happen. You got to be with the Lions fans. You got to take that with a grain of salt. So,
Yeah, and we got Brent DeWitt saying the window is not closed for the Lions, but it's down a few inches for sure. Good morning, Brent. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Brent and Broski.
And Broski saying good morning to Brent, and good morning to Tammy Pickard. She's saying good conversation. I was pulling for the Lions when I was sure my Panthers were not going anywhere. Absolutely, Tammy. That was exactly my sentiment. I've been pro Lions, they're cats. They roll with us. So good morning. Thank you for joining us. And Broski Bear adding that game was
wait. You're
storm.
Comparing things. I could say I'm rooting for the Eagles when the Jets
don't
go anywhere,
but
both of them fly. Jets.
Yes.
I don't get this.
Yes. Broski Bear also saying that game was a perfect storm for the Lions. Goff got dinged early and wasn't right the entire game. The injuries finally caught up to the defense. And you're right, Jack, you just got to get in where you fit in. But you guys know I was rolling with the Lions even before they got super good, because I wasn't 100% sold that the Panthers were going to the playoffs. That won't be the case this year coming up, however. So, you know, that is one of those things. Detroit was injured a lot. Their defense was banged up. What was it, like 20-30% of the defense was ranked as having injuries. So the fact that you all got there, and then to add the length of the season, you know, it's the end of the season. Everybody's playing injured, honestly, at some point, whether they document it or not. And so the fact that you all got there and did as well as you did, but it was a shock for much of the NFL culture, and probably even Commanders fans were shocked as well, if they, you know, are honest about it, the fact that they beat the Lions like that. Brent is saying that the Goff knew what answers to give the medical staff and was concussed for sure after that hit. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
When you
hopefully
look at that division that the Lions in, it's still an awesome division. You know, the Packers are going to be good. They're going to have a winning record. They're going to be good. The Chicago Bears are going to be much, much better on the Ben Johnson. They'd be better on any new coach, but they're going to make a serious playoff run. And there were a number of games they should have won last year that they lost. So their record was kind of deceiving last year. And the weak link is Minnesota, and they were 14-3, and they're picked by a lot of people to finish last this year. They have the same team coming back. So
yeah,
it's going to be tough on Detroit this year.
But they're making noise on the Minnesota Vikings. It's funny you bring them up, Jack. That was going to be my next comment. They are actually been one of the main topics, especially with their quarterback fiasco. You know, Sam Darnold now leaving and going to the West Coast out there with the Seahawks, and them saying to Aaron Rodgers that they're going to be sticking with McCarthy. Well, as of yesterday, according to CBS Sports, they have started trying to talk to Ryan Tannehill. Now, let's be clear. That's not going to be much of a difference maker, because he is not the same Ryan Tannehill he was before he went to the Titans. But they say they are interested in him. He played with the Titans from 2019 to 2023 and did not have a team in 2024.
So they're getting more for 1 year layoff. Why not bring Phillip Rivers back after, what, a 3-year layoff? Come on, Ryan Tannehill, are you kidding me?
Right.
I mean, that's bad.
Yeah, they're
See, the thing is, that's getting lost in the sauce in this whole thing is that Minnesota has a capable offense. And you can literally stick anybody in that backfield. See, this is what I'm talking about. If you have a decent offense, we have a great offense, well, a pretty decent offensive line, a good running game. And remember, Minnesota did pick up another running back in the offseason. And then they got the receivers. They got Hawkinson, they got Jefferson, they got Addison. They have an offense. You can literally stick any quarterback behind there that's a capable quarterback, and that offense will be fine. We found that out with Sam Darnold. Nobody thought Sam Darnold was going to do as good as he did last year, and he did well because of that offense. And I think it's the same thing here. Tannehill could be behind there. Aaron Rodgers would probably, with his weird self, would probably take that offense maybe a notch up because he's an experienced quarterback and has had success. But any quarterback could fit in that situation. I think this is the reason why they did all this in the offseason with the offensive line and getting an extra running back in the backfield and beefing up the defense, because they were prepared to really start J.J. McCarthy. Now, I know they're looking at Tannehill, but I don't know if they're going to make Tannehill a backup or they're going to be a mentor to J.J. McCarthy. I don't know how that situation is going to work in Minnesota. A lot of people got Minnesota finishing last. I just don't see that. Yeah, I think Chicago still fills in last because it's a first year head coach in Ben Johnson. Yes, he's helping the offensive line. It's just
what I don't understand is
there's so many.
Are you frozen?
Go ahead, Jack.
I cut in because you froze a moment, so I thought,
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Go ahead.
I wanted to save Sonia so she didn't have to think of something quickly, so I didn't mean to cut in.
You're good.
The situation with J.J. McCarthy at Minnesota, why not just start him right away unless he's not healthy? And if he's not healthy, that's alarming, the second season in a row. I mean, the Bears started Caleb Williams. The Commanders started Jaden Daniels. The Broncos started Bo Nix. So you can play J.J. McCarthy. Just start him. Stop this. Say he's your starter right now. You don't need a bridge quarterback. Get another quarterback for the quarterback room as a backup or whatever in case J.J. McCarthy isn't ready to go. no more this talk about someone keeping the seat warm for J.J. McCarthy. Why isn't he playing now unless physically he's not healthy? And that's a red flag if that's the case.
Yeah, he had a second surgery near the end of December on the same leg he got the MCL ACL tear on. So yeah, I think they're kind of going on a air of caution with that. That's the reason why they're talking to these quarterbacks. It's not necessarily they need a quarterback to start, but they want to make sure that J.J. McCarthy is healthy and ready to go for the start of the season, because about the time that they say he's going to be ready and healthy to go will be the start of the season. So I think they want to get J.J. McCarthy or some quarterback in there until they can make sure that he's good.
Yeah. That's very important, and it's kind of like a placeholder. Like, you don't want to say a placeholder, but you need to be able to have a guarantee in place that you are ready to go, and that's exactly what I was thinking. But Jack makes a good point. Phillip Rivers, I mean, he probably has 8 more kids now since he hasn't been in the league, because he's got a huge family. But let's put his kid making steals to the test. Let's see if he still got that speed on the field. So that would be an interesting thing. Speaking of interesting, Brandon Cooks for the New Orleans Saints, their top draft, their 20th overall pick, I should say, in 2014. They're bringing him back to the New Orleans Saints. He has not played with them since 2016. That's why I'm just like, wow. And this is also his first time joining a team as a free agent of his career. So that's a long time, 11-year NFL veteran, a long time to be reunited with your original team. We saw the Cowboys try that with Ezekiel Elliott. It was no smoke, no filter, no nothing from him coming back, no fizz at all. Brandon Cooks has been one of these names that we've had, up and down, ebbs and flows of his career. What do you guys think about him joining that? Before you guys get to that, let me bring this comment up. I'm sorry, somebody just commented. Tannehill is a waste of time until proven otherwise. Bears should be predicted to finish last in the division. I still can't believe the Vikings didn't give Darnold a 3-year deal with 2 years guaranteed. That's true from Broski. And Tannehill is not the answer. So let's just go ahead and address that. But what do you guys think about, and thanks for your comments, guys. What do you guys think about Brandon Cooks? I mean, so much time has elapsed since he's taken the field as a Saint. It's not even the same team, not the same coaches, staff. I mean, could it be a restart for him to be better, or could this kind of be like, You're muted, Jack.
I don't know how much this is worth talking about, especially in detail. Brandon Cooks. I mean, he's going to have some catches. Chris Olave is their main receiver there. Someone's got to catch the ball. I mean, New Orleans, I get the feeling if they don't draft Shedeur Sanders, it's number 9, and I'm predicting he does fall to number 9, that the Giants don't take him at number 3. That means they might be looking to take one of the quarterbacks next season in what's supposed to be a really good quarterback draft. They're going to figure, okay, we'll just play this year out. If we're so, we're just going to go on a complete rebuild. I mean, he's a veteran presence there, Brandon Cooks. And he's never been one of these prima donna wide receivers, but he's never truly been an elite wide receiver as well. He went to the Houston Texans over there, then the Dallas Cowboys. It's, he might help the Saints a little bit, but let's be honest about it. What are the Saints going to do this year? I mean, what would you consider a good year for New Orleans? If they went 7-10 next season, I'd say they overachieved a little bit when you look at, their team, the way it's constituted right now.
I mean, the Saints, they're, of course, in our same division. And this is where we definitely miss J-Train. So J-Train, we miss you this morning. He's under the weather. Get well, brother. I just feel like the NFC South as a whole is such a mess, honestly, even with Tampa Bay being as good as they are. It's been very off-putting to watch the South. It's been the same 2 teams that are either at the bottom and the same 2 teams that are at the top for the last, 5, 6 seasons. And it hasn't been super competitive. Those teams that are at the top, it usually comes down to a win-loss situation between one of the two teams in the bottom to even determine who the top seed is going to be. And so I don't feel like this season is going to be a mirror as bad as it was of last season. And with Brandon Cooks coming back, I don't really pick much scuttlebutt up from that as well, because the Saints have not really sold me on Carr, even though he's still there. They still are in an adjustment period with their whole coaching staff. There's been some type of coaching staff changes off and on for the last 2 seasons. And anytime you are not sure of your quarterback and your coaches, you are not going to sell me on a successful franchise for that season. It's just too many unknowns, unless you are the anomaly, which was DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud in Texas. And that's a once in a heyday type of thing. So yeah, I'm not really sure. And yes, Broski, I do refer to them as the Aints, but that's I mean, I'm just not really that sold. I mean, it was a big deal because it was so long of a time that he has, been with that team and is now reuniting. It's the first time he's, re-signing. But Brendan's saying 7 wins for the Saints will be a huge overachievement. I'm thinking they may win about 5 games, honestly. I wouldn't. 5 is a stretch, to be honest, but they won 5 last season.
Well, let's look at this Brandon Cook signing as, got to remember that the Saints are over the salary cap, and their salary cap struggling. So they're basically getting Brandon Cooks for a 2-piece and a biscuit, basically. So it's.
And
I mean, it's just a signing that just gives them a full wide receiver room, basically. And yeah, he can help them, and so can everybody else on the team. So it's just, I mean, the Saints are, once they get out of this salary cap hell, they could probably do a little bit better, as the years go on. But right now they have to struggle to get anybody to stay. Pay them to stay, and then get anybody to just come on the team, period, right now. So they're in that little phase, that little zone right now that they can't really do too much anything. So
they're talking about trying to get $17 million of that cap space back and getting rid of linebacker Demario Davis. That's the word that's coming out about 20 minutes ago. $17 million fan favorite, named a top trade candidate. So if they could, I don't know. I know they probably would just go and trade him for a pick. I don't think they would, try to get anything other than the money for him, right, guys?
Yeah, get him for a pick and make sure that the other team they trade him to takes all their, the money that they owe.
Yeah, Cooks is good for a good veteran presence. I believe that wholeheartedly, Brent, but not overall. Jack, what's going down with the Jets?
Nothing in particular that's so newsworthy. Aaron Glenn is trying to put his own stamp on the team, and it's basically the culture within the building with the players that they have. And you could answer a little better with the Lions. I mean, I'm obviously very familiar with Aaron Glenn from the time he was a player and so on, but less familiar with him as a coach than you would be. Is Aaron Glenn truly a firm disciplinarian the way he's made out to be? I don't get that feeling that's necessarily the case. I mean, how is he perceived the Lions?
Well, you got to understand something with Aaron Glenn. He came up with Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell and him are like this. So he has the same coaching strategy as Dan Campbell is. They both come off that same tree. And I think that's why I like Aaron Glenn to be a head coach, not necessarily a defensive coordinator, but I do like him to be a head coach because I think he gets to the players. He'll be a guy that, like as in Dan Campbell, your players will run through a wall for him. And once he gets that culture established in the Jets, this is why I'm really happy he got a head coaching job, and I'm glad it wasn't with New Orleans. Sorry, J-Train. I mean, the Jets are struggling in their own way, but this is something.
You talking
So something underneath that. I think the Jets have a better player structure right now, and what they need is you can see it by the way when he got rid of Aaron Rodgers. He wasn't taking any of that stuff. He's, no day retreats. Come to practice when you're supposed to come to practice. If you don't want to do any of that, you can't be here. Period. We don't want any of that distraction.
I don't think it was a case when they spoke to Aaron Rodgers there was any way Rodgers was going to stay. We don't know what went on behind closed doors. Rodgers may have said all the right things. No, I'll come. I'll do whatever you want, this or that. They're trying to change the culture. But are you really changing it with Justin Fields? Justin Fields reminds me of a student who's taken a course and the course is over and the grade is still incomplete. You're asking the student to hand in an additional paper. You don't even know after all that time. That's Justin Fields. I mean, I get the feeling Shedeur Sanders is going to be there when the Jets pick at number 7, and the Jets are going to bypass him because how do you draft Shedeur Sanders once you got Justin Fields? They had to make promises to Justin Fields he was going to be a guy, and they're not sure. They want to see whether Justin Fields is going to be their guy or not. He's more than a bridge quarterback, even though they didn't make a true commitment to him beyond 1 year. They all allowing him to audition for this job, and if he's good, he's going to get it, despite Shedeur Sanders potentially being there for them. And that could be a mistake, because if Justin Fields is so-so and they pass on Shedeur Sanders, and it could come back to bite the Jets because they're probably not going to pick that high in the draft. I get the feeling a number of these teams are going to be looking at these other alternative quarterbacks like the Quinn Ewers, the Will Howards, etc. And they might see certain potential in guys like that to step up. But that's risky when you do that.
You guys talked J-Train up. J-Train literally just chimed in and said, good morning. The Saints are $30 million under the cap now due to restructuring. And Cooks is at best a third or fourth receiver for them. So, hi, J-Train. Either you've been there, we didn't know it, but good morning. Thank you so much for chiming in. And
he's a Saint fan. J-Train's not excited about getting Brandon Cooks. That's why I said, why are we spending all this time on this guy? Even J-Train doesn't want us to spend the time on
J-Train says that Sanders is going to fall no further than the 3rd overall, Jack. So he just put
J-Train doesn't know the draft. He's a nice guy, a knowledgeable guy, but he doesn't have a good feel for this year's draft. He's going to fall. He'll be there for New Orleans at number 9. And is New Orleans going to take him, or they're going to create the biggest buzz of the draft by not taking him? That's the question.
Brent says there was never a chance that AG was keeping AR. Fields' move surprised me, but he doesn't hate it. I mean, it's just one of those things. At the end of the day, we are fans, and unfortunately, we don't have 1,000% of the control we would like to, even though they say we do. The fans are the most important player. They'll say. It's just a toss-up amongst everything. I did see that the Jets missed out on signing one of the biggest free agents that the Broncos had, and that being Hufanga, Talanoa Hufanga, who just signed a 3-year, $39 million deal with the Broncos. The free agent safety, Jack, did you know about that?
Well, there's a cap. You can't just sign anyone. I mean, you make one signing, that means that's one less signing you can make elsewhere.
Yeah, what are y'all's thoughts on, speaking of signing, how the Cincinnati Bengals have put all their money in their office with Higgins, Burrow, and Chase, $115 million just amongst those 3 players, and that leaves them, I think, like less than $70 million for the defense. They have no money left to put in their defense at all, and everybody's been predicting that their defense is going to be ranked 33rd or 38th because of it.
Cincinnati's doing what the Jets did with Aaron Rodgers, accommodating the quarterback, because Joe Burrow wants T. Higgins there with Jamar Chase. Obviously, Jamar Chase is, he's arguably the best receiver in the NFL, him along with Justin Jefferson, at least in my opinion. T. Higgins isn't quite at that caliber. They need badly to sign Trey Hendrickson. They're great defensive linemen, but they're making T. Higgins a little more of a priority than him because they want Joe Burrow to be happy that he has both his weapons. I don't know about that.
Yeah, Broski is saying the Jets should be taking a page out of all these other teams' playbooks. Build your team first and then worry about your quarterback. And he says Fields doesn't learn from his mistakes. He doesn't have quarterback instincts. He also misses games every season. You will see what I'm talking about this season. And J Train speaking about the Bengals is saying they'll get 45 points a game. And Broski comes back and says this is a tough offseason and draft to address starting quarterbacks. You guys do have, Justin Fields there. I honestly was surprised. I forgot about that. Like for a quick second, like, wait a minute, who is their quarterback?
I got something, an interesting take a little bit, okay? The Steelers, they haven't made a decision yet, but they did pick last season Russell Wilson over Justin Fields. The Jets, you get the feeling they could have signed Russell Wilson instead of Justin Fields. And they didn't do that. I mean, where does Russell Wilson wind up?
I don't know. I hope he doesn't come to the Jets now. This will just be a repeat of what happened.
No, he's not coming to the Jets. That's definitely not. But I think he's going to have to settle on being a bridge quarterback, maybe to Tennessee if they do draft Cam Ward at number one. We have a difference of opinion whether they will or won't. But wherever he goes, and you look at the Miami with Tua getting hurt all the time, and Zach Wilson is their primary backup. I mean, could you imagine how wild that would be? Because Tua's probably going to miss games, and Zach Wilson's going to be given another opportunity. And can you imagine he flourishes with Miami? How that's going to look to the Jet fan base.
That's but that happens. I've seen that at Carolina. Look at Sam Darnold, look at Baker Mayfield. I mean, Baker and Sam both got pretty close to, making a run for it, and they were nowhere near that in Carolina. And with their, even though Baker was good in Cleveland, Sam wasn't that good when he was with the Jets. And I remember when they signed him with the Panthers, I was like, why are we signing him? But at the end of the day, if you look at the bigger picture, we're not able to predict what recipe is supposedly, no pun intended, cooked up with Russell Wilson and wherever he decides to go. I always say that he and Tua remind me of each other. It would have been super cool to see him in Miami, but whoever Russell goes to, I think Denver still is paying him for like another year or another half season or something. So, yeah. Yeah, I'm a Panthers fan. Okay, all right, broski. Yes. Keep pounding. Yes, I'm from Carolina, but I live in Atlanta now. But I'm from Carolina's home. But I'm a huge Panthers fan. Started the all-female fan club and all that. Now I'm hosting this great
things have gotten better for the Panthers because the year before last, remember the final game, the season tickets are going for $3.
Yeah, I know, Jack.
Hot dog.
Now that'll be what's going on. Well, you know what? No, Jets fans stay loyal. I can't even say that. You guys just go out there for the camaraderie and pay your same prices and just commingle with each other, no matter what's going on with the game. It's a meet and greet.
Jets fans are like having Novocaine. That's the thing.
Oh my! Oh yeah.
It's.
Let me see what's going on with my Panthers news since we're talking about that. Still talking about the free agency. As of 32 minutes ago, they literally just recognized the Panthers as one of the top teams who've done a really good job in this free agency. They're getting recognized for superb bargain signing. The defense, they've really been working on that during the offseason to help the pass rush. And people are taking notice. Sports Illustrated is writing a whole little article as about 30 minutes ago about just, the defense has been in order, and so far so good for the Dan Morgan and the whole unit. They're getting everybody together, especially with signing of, and I hate to say the name, but this is the guy's name, Bobby Brown III and Tershawn Wharton. And there's also promising a pass rusher who finished with more sacks this past season than any member of the whole team in 2024. So I'm excited. I'm telling you guys right now, we are going to claim the South. We're going to win the South this next season.
It could happen. I mean, Tampa, they've been to the playoffs the last 5 years, in a row. And Atlanta was picked last year, and maybe Atlanta, improves a little bit this year. The only thing I could safely say, the Panthers are going to finish ahead of New Orleans Saints. But if the Panthers should regress by some chance, and it's the same Panthers and just Bryce Young, it was just an aberration how well he played at the end of last year. I mean, then the Panthers, I'll tell you, they'll be in a big rebuilding mode. Not that they're not in a rebuilding mode right
Yeah,
now.
we've been rebuilding for like this next season is going to be 10 years since we made a Super Bowl run. And Broski, yeah, I get it that you're talking about basically for you to be, Broski, for you to be saying you watch Panthers game, you really got a lot of shots over there. He's talking about that we allowed the most rushing yards of any team in history. I'm gonna have to look at that because I've not heard that at all. That we allow the most rushing yards of any team in the history of the NFL. Definitely have not heard that. And he's saying Bryce Young is a Keebler elf. Yeah, you give me the facts on that because that's the first I've heard of us allowing the most rushing yards in the history of the NFL. That's a little steep there.
Well, the Panthers are going 8th in the draft overall, so I don't know. Are they going to pick Fanita, best player?
Yeah.
Thank you, Brent.
Yeah, we weren't even around.
No,
So
You weren't even a twinkle in the NFL's eyes.
right.
No, having a Lion guy here, we're not used to having someone with a winning team here. I mean, it's always the same thing: the Jets, the Panthers, the Giants, the Saints. We have a discussion, with 4 losing teams back and forth, at least with the Lions. There's a Super Bowl contender there. And I felt for the Lions this year. I really felt for them. Normally, I couldn't give a darn about the Lions, but I saw how great the fan base is. There was so much energy in Detroit. It's as if the fans are trying to will the team over the finish line to get to the Super Bowl. It seems so unfair for the Lions, to go out the way they did after the season they had. There was something unfair about it.
Broski, who is your team? Since you got so much to say, who
Chicago. You should know that by Broski Beer.
I wouldn't even say
Chicago is going to be good next season.
Yeah,
They're
but
gonna
they
be
have
good,
not
and
been.
Caleb Williams is going to be
They
good.
have not been since 85. They have not been since
I don't
85.
know
They're
so
garbage.
much about whether they're going to be good. I think they're going to be better than they were last
Right.
year.
They're
But
not
again,
all
you're
that.
under a first year head coach in Ben Johnson. I don't like him as being a head coach, but
You're
I
just
mean, like
mad
I
he
said,
left
and
the Lions as a coordinator, probably.
I'm not mad he left the Lions as a coordinator. I'm not mad that AG left either. That's just the progression of how the NFL goes. But at the same time, I just think that AG is a better head coach than Ben Johnson will be because Ben Johnson has an air of arrogance that you can't. He doesn't have that grit type of coaching ability that he came from. Okay, his head coaching ability is going to be different than AG's. AG is going to build a culture. AG is going to build a culture, whereas Ben Johnson is just trying to make sure that Caleb Williams doesn't get destroyed in his first, because he gave it, that offensive line gave up the league high in sacks against Chicago. So, and that's the reason why they weren't successful. As long as he builds that lineup, they should be decent because they got J-Train. I would be mad about your team. Don't be mad about. I'm not mad about my team. I know where my team is at. Anyway, don't start that stuff. Don't start that with me.
I can't wait
Not this early
to
morning.
attack this Broski Beer with these stats.
Well,
I just
Aaron
pulled up.
Glenn is more Jet than a Giant. If you look at, more of a Jet than a Lion. If you look at his background, okay, so that's what he might be feeling. I think that's why, in part, he picked the Jets over the Saints because, the Jets were part of his DNA, being a player there all the years, all the fond memories and so on, even though he had a background with the Saints to an extent.
So,
Yeah, I mean, you can't refuse that. You can't refuse that ideology but you still got to put in the fact that he's hanged out with Dan Campbell for a long. They're really good friends. So he's taken a page out of he'll take a page out of Dan Campbell's book as far as the culture is concerned. I'm sure he's going to coach in a different way. He's not going to coach the Lion way. Obviously, he's going to coach the AG way. That's what he's going to do. It's still going to be a culture reversal for the Jets, but I think he's going to be more than capable of doing that.
Yeah. Let me just plug in real quick. Broski is now trying to hype up about Caleb Williams. Let me tell you about your garbage Bears, Broski. In the 59 years between the retirement of Sid Luckman in 1950 and the acquisition of Jay Cutler in 2009, no Bears quarterback before or since has thrown for more than 11,600 career yards or tossed for more than 68 touchdown passes. Your quarterbacks are horrible. There's a lack of strong quarterbacks in Chicago. They have historically struggled to find and develop consistent, high-performing quarterbacks no matter what type of draft you guys get. The Panthers helped y'all out by giving y'all all this stuff for your top draft. The top draft y'all gave us. We gave y'all DJ Moore. You've done nothing but killed his career. I wouldn't be on here talking about nothing about the Panthers being soft like clouds if I was a Bears fan. Truly. And Caleb is still not sold on me. He's been sniffing too much nail polish, if you ask me.
By the end of next season,
no quarterback has thrown for more than 30 touchdowns in any season, and 148 different quarterbacks in the NFL that have done so. Yes, sir. Go ahead, Jack. I'm sorry, I had to get
by the end of next season, Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels will be nearly on a par at the end of next season. Okay, so don't sell the Bears short, Caleb Williams short. And Ben Johnson is coming into a very nice situation. I mean, any head coach would be with Chicago because, like I mentioned earlier, they lost about 5 games that they could have easily won, maybe should have won last season. And that would have made them a playoff team. I mean, at the very least, the Bears are going to have a winning record next year. And Caleb Williams' development is going to come along very nicely.
Broski, we don't do call-ins, but you can continue to type until your fingers bleed. We got it for you. Hello, Brent. Yes. But anyway, and then let's talk about the fourth quarter collapses. The Bears have a tendency to blow largely. Listen, the whole world watched y'all not even know the game was still going on last season. I don't even remember who they were playing. Everybody in the audience was all the fans were telling you guys the game was still going. You guys are garbage. Holler at me when y'all can get with some legacies from the 85 Super Bowl shuffle teams. You're nothing. You're nothing. You will continue to be nothing. All right. So other than that, guys, I don't see any other big NFL news. Let's go ahead and take this time now to kind of rebound back to what we were talking about earlier. Jack, with the unfortunate passing of George Foreman, so that we can, kind of enlighten our audience. And I know you were saying where you left off a little bit earlier in our first segment that you actually had penned a letter to him and received a personal letter as well from him. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was a nice personal letter why he wouldn't be attending a banquet where his longtime publicist, Bill Kaplan, was being honored. So he wrote something nice about Bill Kaplan, and we wanted George Foreman there in part because he was an attraction, and if people hear George Foreman's attending a banquet, they're more likely to buy seats. So there was like a motive there to have George there beyond just his wonderful self. And he understood that as well, and that's why I said he bought 5 tables on his own out of nowhere. He wrote a check. And it was a nice handwritten letter because I made it personal, telling him the first like I said before, the first boxing show I ever attended to live was with one of his fights, and I described everything. And so it was nice. And I knew the letter was from him without a doubt because it had, a few grammatical mistakes in there, as well. That I pick up on, but it was a nice, it was a cherished letter, and he was an iconic personality. One of George Foreman's close friends / mentors was Jim Brown, the running back, not the singer. And it was an odd situation when George lost to Muhammad Ali in Zaire. Jim Brown was also extremely close to Muhammad Ali. He was kind of like a big brother to Muhammad Ali in a certain sense. But when the fight was over, Jim Brown was hanging out with George Foreman in his dressing room. He was more concerned to see how George Foreman was doing rather than celebrating, with Ali. And when when he was a youth and he got his job in the Job Corps, Jim Brown was his idol. Like, to him, Jim Brown was bigger than life, in every way.
Yeah, that's definitely amazing. And, a lot of these sports, they cross, they cross cultures, cross sports, cross interests. And it's always, like I always say, sports is a separate family. But to be such an influential person, just from, the things that I've read and knew, and I remember watching him as a child growing up, and some of his different philanthropy things he had going on. He, of course, boxed between 1967 and 97, and 97 was my senior year of college. So I remember him very well, and was nicknamed Big George. Of course, what I always remember, too, is all his children, or at least most of them, had some form of his name in them. In fact, there was a couple of them just were named George the Third, George the Fourth. It was kind of funny to me.
Georgetta's daughter.
Yes, Georgetta's daughter. But I just thought that was really funny how two of his sons actually were named like they were successors of him, like the third and the fourth as well. And of course, he was an Olympic gold medalist. That was one thing that we didn't know. I didn't know early on that he was a gold medalist.
Well, he waved him. Well, what happened? It created a bit of a controversy in the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City. The track and field athletes, Tommy Smith and John Carlos, after they won the gold and bronze medal respectively, they got on the Olympic stand and they were playing the American national anthem. You always play it in honor of the gold medalist. So while it was played, they had on black gloves and they held their fists in the air. And that was a protest as far as how things were going on in this country. And it created a major controversy, and both athletes received, a lot of hate as a result of that. Whether they should have done it or not is debatable. We could sit down and talk about it and discuss that, and have different viewpoints. But then when George Foreman, days later, won the Olympic gold medal, he grabbed a small American flag and he was parading around the ring and waving it. And even though Foreman said he never was protesting and never trying to counter what Smith and Carlos were doing, his was just a proud moment of what he felt the country had given him the opportunity, getting a job in a job cause. And he was just a proud American at that moment. He didn't mean it as any political statement against anyone. It was taken as such by a lot of people. Like, how can you do that? People in the Black community, how can you do that and you go against Smith and Carlos, even though Foreman was saying he wasn't, protesting them. So that created a big controversy. But, the public is fickle regardless. The same people who are praising Foreman for waving the American flag, 9 months later, he makes his professional debut at Madison Square Garden. He overpowers a fighter named Don Waldheim in 3 rounds. They booed him out of the ring, the crowd. They looked at him as a pro. You're a big bully and overmatched opponent. So can you believe it? This is a guy who they're cheering and complimenting. And then 9 months later, they're like booing him loudly at Madison Square Garden. So the public is very fickle. Sometimes you wonder, people want to build a great reputation, but you could lose it very quickly. You could have a bad reputation and get a good one sometimes very quickly. It doesn't make sense sometimes.
You have a good reputation. It just takes that one thing to ruin it, and it takes forever, seemingly, to rebound that. Strilla, looked like you wanted to say something about that.
No, I was just reading Brett's comment in the comment section there.
Yeah,
about George Foreman.
I'm going to get to it in 1 second. I wanted to say that Foreman originally retired in 1977 after a loss to Jimmy Young. It was such a long time before he would come back, and in his debut to come back into the ring at age 45, his opponent was 26-year-old Michael Moorer. So someone his junior, quite significant.
Well, that's who he regained the title from eventually. That wasn't his comeback opponent. Yeah, you're right. For what had happened with Foreman after losing to Ali and Zaire, and Foreman had built up a reputation of being invincible. Because keep this in mind, Ali had lost to Joe Frazier and Ken Norton. And even though he beat them in rematches, he beat them both on very close decisions. And Foreman defended his tie. I mean, he beat Joe Frazier in 2 rounds, knocked him down 6 times. He knocked out Ken Norton in 2 rounds. So if you play the comparison game, Ali struggled with Norton and Frazier, and Foreman demolished them. And the thought was that Ali was past his prime, that Foreman would, be too young and too powerful, and that he would knock Ali out, whatever round. And then, Ali would lie on the ropes. Foreman tired himself out, part of a design strategy that Ali used before. That wasn't the first time Ali used the rope-a-dope. That's the first time it worked in a big fight. He used the rope-a-dope against Joe Frazier in the first fight, but Frazier didn't fade out. Frazier, kept punching the whole fight. So Foreman loses to Ali and Zaire, and his feeling of invincibility was kind of gone, at that moment. He didn't think that could possibly happen. And when you lose like that, you're not quite the same. So to get back his feeling of invincibility, they set up a gimmick thing, Foreman against 5 guys in one night.
Yeah,
they marched them in one at a time. And it turned out to be a fiasco. He got some good wins. He beat Frazier 2nd time amongst those wins. And then he fought Jimmy Young in Puerto Rico, was very hot. And Foreman was completely dehydrated by the end of the fight. And he said in the dressing room he felt he was going to die. And he actually did die. And he was brought back for a bigger purpose. That's what he said. And he didn't fight again for 10 years. He got fat, out of condition. He had this youth center, and they couldn't pay the bills anymore. He didn't have the money. So he decided after a 10-year layoff, he's going to become heavyweight champion of the world again. And that's kind of ludicrous. An athlete out 10 years. But in boxing, you could do something you can't do in any other sports. You could take certain shortcuts. For example, you could be losing all fight, and it just takes one punch to undo everything, And his comeback, was semi-successful, that he beat guys originally. He fought Evander Holyfield, tried to regain the heavyweight title from Holyfield. Foreman fought a good fight, a competitive fight, but lost a clear decision. And by the time he fought Michael Moorer in 1995, he was long in the tooth, and Moorer was winning every second of that fight, putting a beating on Foreman. And then in the 10th round, Moorer's chin, which was never the best, let him down. Foreman connected a couple of shots. Moorer's knocked out. And it was, a storybook finish.
Yeah, and Brent is saying, never forget that ridiculous fight between Foreman and Frazier's kid. George asking the ref, do you want me to keep hitting him? You brought that up, Jack.
No, wait. With Foreman and Frazier's kid?
Yeah.
I didn't bring that up. What are you talking about?
No, when you were talking about him fighting Frazier earlier, and you was talking about some phrase he said in there. I don't know. I kind of got a little lost at some point.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen. But it was one of the legendary fights. The one fight that people debate about that never took place, and I don't know whether you guys have opinion, Tyson against Foreman. People keep talking what would have happened. They were actually talking when it was the second coming of George Foreman, Tyson was around. Mm-hmm. And the fight never quite got made. But that would have kind of been intriguing, because a lot of people felt that Tyson's style was made to order for Foreman, because Foreman would come up with these big uppercuts, and he was big and strong, and it was so hard to hurt George Foreman.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, a lot more people than not feel had the two of them met at their respective primes, Tyson and Foreman, that Foreman would have won.
Yeah, Foreman was the oldest to ever win the World Heavyweight Boxing Championship of major honors and the second oldest in any weight class behind Bernard Hopkins at the light heavyweight. And he retired in 97 at the age of 48. So he only fought 3 years after he came back the second time with a final record of 76 wins, 68 knockouts, and 5 losses. One of the famous losses coming at the hands of Muhammad Ali, which we spoke about, who hit him with a lightning fast 1-2 combination, which was the fastest punch, quote, Foreman had ever seen. He was, of course, inducted, no joke here, into the International Boxing Hall of Fame, as he rightfully deserved. And in 2002, he was named one of the 25 greatest fighters of the past 80 years by The Ring. And he has a lot of other accolades that followed him. Brent saying Tyson versus Foreman would have been an interesting fight for sure. And that's where we will definitely leave that. And he will definitely be missed by so very many. And of course, we wish nothing but the best for his family.
He had a great sense of humor. He'd be on a talk show. I forgot, was it Johnny Carson or Jay Leno or whatever? And Foreman had a fight coming up, and he was asked when he was on his comeback, the second coming, well, so-and-so, do you think they're taking you too lightly? And he'd say, I hope so. You know, and he'd always joke about the cheeseburgers and the this and the that. And he was a personality, a big personality. And like I said, he had so many legacies. You know, he was the type of athlete you could just picture. Take an NFL team. They're in the locker room and someone walks into the locker room and all the players are going to line up and want to meet him. Foreman was that type of big personality. If he walked into the Detroit Lions locker room, all the players would get up and get online. They'd want to get their picture taken with them. And how many athletes do you have that are bigger than life like that? He was one of them.
Definitely. Yes, Strilla, you were saying something?
Yeah, so I know this is not one of his accolades, but I know you alluded to this earlier about his kids. Not only did he have 12 children, but he had 4 wives. Yes. He had his sons are George Jr., George III, George IV, George V, George VI, and he has Georgetta, as Jack stated before.
1 girl,
5 sons, 7 daughters. He has 5 sons, 7 daughters. Yep. And he said the reason why he named his sons like that, he said, if one of us goes up, then we all go up together. If one of us goes down, we all go down together.
I love that.
He had a planning for his names, I see.
I love that. And with that nice brood of children, right before he made his re-debut into the boxing, it was quoted that he became an ordained minister during the time he was running that youth center that Jack was speaking about earlier. So maybe he was so into the ministry, he didn't have the money to pay for the youth center. Who knows?
Well, he also did commentary for HBO as like an analyst. And I don't know how prepared George was, like as being a hardcore analyst. Once he heard of a fighter who got a signing bonus, and this is after George had sold a selling grill and made $137 million, and he was going to be salaried on top of all the money he'd made boxing, etc. And he heard the fighter got a bonus for $1.4 million. And George said, wow, what I would love to do if I had that $1.4 million. And Jim Lampley and Larry Merchant jumped on him and said, come on, George, get out of here, because to George, that was basically small money, extra change, $1.4 million at that point in life. George also became close friends with Muhammad Ali after Ali beat him in retirement. He would call Ali up a lot. They would talk on the phone. So they had developed a friendship. And he was always extremely fond of the guy he beat, like Joe Frazier as well.
Yeah, so that definitely is a tell-all, that it's just within the ring, a battle, and then outside friendship. Like I said, definitely a great person from all accounts. Maybe not as much with all 4 wives, but, he clearly loved women. So, we just we wish.
I learned something new. Did he have 4 wives? I remember he married young. The second, I didn't realize he had 4 wives. Are you
Yep.
sure you're not kind of confusing him with Muhammad Ali, who was married 4 times?
He was married to Mary Joan Martley from 85 till his death. He was married to Adrienne Calhoun from 71 to 74, Cynthia Lewis from 77 to 79, and Sharon actually it's 5. Sharon Goodson from 81 to 82, and Andrea Skeet from 82 to 85. So he had 5 wives actually.
Oh.
And out of his 12 children, he adopted 2 recently, actually. Isabella Brandy Leisha in 2009 and Courtney Isaac in 2012.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, definitely.
He loved children too, obviously.
Yes, definitely. So very, very good for him and for everything he's shared and the legacy he's left for everyone. And we just, wish peace upon that family. All right, guys, we're going to switch gears to some NBA news here as we kick off our last segment of the show. I'm B. Strilla, Jack Hirsch, and I'm Sonia, and we've been sitting in. This is the Sunday morning sports show. Mac and J Train are off recovering, and Keith Angle was on with us earlier. Guys, the NBA has just been nothing short of just bad overall. LeBron James does come back, but the Lakers are blown out by the Bulls of all teams. But Luka Doncic is still putting up what he needs to put up to cook for Los Angeles.
Yeah, Luka played well for a couple of games with LeBron out, and the Lakers played well, a couple of games there. So I think it comes down to chemistry at the end with him and LeBron. And, Lakers an intriguing team, what they're going to do. But the West is really tough. The West is really, really tough. I mean, is Luka, this is a question I want to ask both of you. Who's going to make a bigger difference come playoff time amongst these 2 acquisitions this year? Luka to the Lakers and Jimmy Butler to Golden State. Who is going to make which team better this season we're talking about? Obviously, Luka would be the answer long term, but for this particular season.
I honestly think, even though a lot of people probably would lean towards the Luka, trade, it does seem seemingly, but I'm tending to lean towards the trio of Stephon, Butler, and Draymond Green out in the Warriors. You got to remember the Warriors are a championship caliber team. They've been there before so many other times. The Lakers are as well. However, as of late, is what I'm speaking of. I think that Butler is that missing piece, since they got rid of Jordan Poole, and we've seen, the split up of and Klay Thompson. We haven't seen the Warriors look as formidable as they had been in the past, but we're adding Jimmy Butler. He kind of is a blend of both of those 2 gentlemen I just mentioned, who were prior members of the Warriors team, that could possibly fill in on both sides, offensive and defensive, for that team. What do you think, Strilla?
Well, Steph Curry had to sit out a couple of games with an ankle strain lately, and to your benefit on that, Butler did step up in those games. Actually, he had the high scoring in both the games that they won, and they played pretty well without Steph Curry, which is amazing in itself, but whatever.
Right.
But they did pretty well. And you got to also look out for other players that are making differences on that team. One of them being Brandon Podziemski. He's averaging 10.5 points a game, but there's some games that he does step out there and really play well. That's the guy I notice a lot when I'm not looking at Steph Curry and Butler and Draymond. He's actually making this is a good team. This is a good, stable team. It's not one of the best teams that Golden State has had in the past, but it is a stable team, and I think they'll do well in the playoffs. I don't think they're going to go to a championship. I don't think they have that team caliber yet, but they are going to make a dent in the playoffs. I do like OKC, but yeah, to what Jack said, yeah, I think I would go with Butler and Golden State before I go with Duke.
What are your
The
thoughts,
Lakers.
Jack? Yeah, what are your thoughts, Jack?
I don't know. I mean, Luca's at his best in the sense if he's asked to carry a team. But keep in mind, him and Kyrie teamed up last year, 2 games away from winning the NBA championship. And a focused LeBron come playoff time, if he can gel with Luca, and the rest of the guys like Austin Reeves have it together. But when you're playing guys like Dorian Finney-Smith and counting on them as starters, you kind of like wonder. It would seem to me that between OKC and Denver, one of them is going to go to the finals. They're the 2 favorites and, hanging a little on the outside of the Golden State, the Lakers, etc. I mean, do we have any dark horses like the Minnesota Timberwolves, who a year ago there were high expectations? I mean, can a team like that do anything? And I don't know.
Well, nobody's talking about Houston.
Yeah.
Houston's on a 9-game
There's
winning
a
streak
reason
right
no
now.
one's
They're playing.
No one believes they're going to.
Yeah.
Hi,
And
Mac.
they're the number 2 seed in the West. So
Yeah.
I mean, they've been playing some tremendously good ball.
That's another question too. You say they're the number 2 seed in the West, but a few teams are kind of bottled up so close together for the next few seeds. How important is that seeding going to be to certain teams, who they're going to play? Now, if you're a team like the Denver Nuggets, for example, you want to be a number 2 seed, obviously, which, because you don't want to play OKC until the finals or something, or that type of scenario. I mean, how many teams are going to try to be avoiding certain other teams?
In this day and age of the NBA, I don't think anybody's going to try to avoid anybody, to tell you the truth. In the East right now, just to take a point, because the Pistons are a 6 seed, and everybody wants them to draw the Knicks because the Knicks are probably playing the most vulnerable of the teams right now, although the Knicks have gotten on a little healthy game-winning streak lately. I think they just won their last game, but they got players that can get you to the championship too. I don't think there's really any. I just don't think in the NBA, this NBA now, you have that factor going into the playoffs. I think everybody will be happy playing on anybody. I just don't see that being a factor.
But don't we have to wait for the play-in tournament to be done before we know the seeding? That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
You're looking and sometimes you get a dangerous team in the play-in format. With all of Dallas's injuries, they've now fallen basically into a tie with Phoenix. And Dallas isn't going to present a danger to anyone, not with Kyrie Irving out for the season. Even if Anthony Davis comes back, they're not going to be that dangerous, I don't think, without Kyrie. But the Phoenix Suns, you never know come playoff time if they put it together.
And let me just interject here. Mac chimed in. He says, "Good morning, great show." He chimed in about 3 minutes
best to
ago.
Mac.
Definitely best to him.
Mac.
You save me a text message to Mac later, Mac. I'm sending my best now. Okay.
Absolutely. Now, you guys and Mac, thank you so much for joining us here today. We hope we see you real soon. We wish you all the best. Y'all, the Thunder is what's making the loudest noise, though, as that sneaky team. They made it official on Thursday night that they have clinched the West #1 seed and home court advantage throughout at least the first 3 rounds of the playoffs. The Cavaliers, despite their worst skid of the season, maintain a lead over the #2 Celtics, which is another shocker. And they're holding steady with 5 games as of today. So it's still a lot of ball to play.
Cleveland is on a downcast right now. They've lost the last 4 games, and the Celtics have won the last 4 games. So this is going to come down to the end of the season. And I can see this already. How many games they out right now? I think it was 6 the last time I saw.
5,
You know, the Celtics are coasting. If they do play the Cavs in the Eastern Finals, all it means is the Cavs have one extra home game. And I don't think the Celtics are sweating that. They're that concerned. You know, they rather rest and focus, you know, on the playoffs and be geared towards that. They're 5 games behind Cleveland as it is, so no need to try to chase them. You know, they don't have enough time. But not that it would matter. I think everyone basically expects the Celtics to come out of the East. I think that's a strong consensus. I think in the West we'll have so many varying opinions of who could be in the finals.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget to play in teams either. I mean, Sonia's Atlanta Hawks, man, they're playing terrific too. I think they've won the last 5 out of 6 games. The Chicago Bulls, who beat those Lakers, they're playing well too. It's just it's whoever comes into the tournament at the same time, basically. Go ahead, Jack. You're
muted.
Yes, this. If the season ended now, you mentioned the Atlanta Hawks. In the play-in tournament, I believe they'd be playing the Miami Heat as of now. And the Heat have been dreadful, losing game after game after game. So that would be nearly like a gimme for the Hawks, the way things are right now. And then there are number teams that are beatable there. I mean, decent teams, but beatable, like the Pacers, even the Bucks, you know, a beatable team. I mean, 40-30 so far. I mean, few people expect the Bucks, you know, to come out of the East. And I'll tell you, the big surprise has been the Detroit with J.B. Bickerstaff there. I mean, they've been the biggest surprise in the NBA when you consider how bad they've been the last couple of years. To see what they're doing this year, becoming a playoff team. I mean, it's wow. It's hard to believe the coaching hasn't played a major role in that. I don't want to hear, well, the young players like Kate Cunningham are finally putting it all together. I think it has to be a lot more than that. I know they made certain veteran moves like Malik Beasley, etc. But they've been the big surprise to me, the Detroit Pistons.
I mean, how unfortunate.
Go ahead, Tony.
No, I was going to ping pong onto a different team. But go ahead and talk about the Pistons, and then I'm going to plug in somebody else that could have been.
We just talked about the Pistons, Sonia. I mean,
I just want him to
you know, the coach went off on the officials a few days ago about all the technical fouls called on them. And then there was the big question. You have to have a pedigree in the league. If you're a veteran team with established players, or officials going to call all those technicals, because it's a young team that doesn't have these high-impact names. Did the officials have a lot less patience to hear about it? But, you know, Bickerstaff really went off at the press conference.
I want to talk about a team that could have been way further down the road than what we anticipated. And can you guys hear me? Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I want to talk about a team that could have been further down the road than what we anticipated. And that would be, okay, you guys. All right, there you are. I don't know. I'm having technical difficulties. Can you guys hear me now? Can you see me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. For some reason, my screen just moved. All right. I guess I wasn't supposed to talk about this team. But anyway, just like these issues I keep having, this team I'm about to bring up next is one of those teams that has had their own share of issues, and it's actually heartbreaking. And it's none other than the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, when they went down with Joel Embiid, who's been plagued by injuries, they thought they were going to be able to bank on Paul George for being a person that could propel them into the playoffs and kind of save the day, even though Joel is out once again, season-ending injury. However, now Paul George himself is in that same position, and unfortunately for the 76ers, they will probably most likely miss the playoffs. Historically, this team has just had a lot of stuff. It's kind of equivalent of ping pong balls, just going back and forth for the last few seasons. I don't know what it is. It's kind of like a bad omen over that organization. What do you guys think?
I don't think
Philadelphia Eagles, huh?
No, I don't think anyone expected Paul George to be a savior. He was going to be part of the big three with Embiid, Maxey, Paul George. That became a kind of fad in the NBA. Have your big three. All the teams would look to have a big three. And like we mentioned, Phoenix before. So that worked for Phoenix, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal. But Paul George, we use the term a little long in the tooth. He was long in the tooth coming to the Sixers. I mean, what did he do from the Pacers? He goes to OKC. Him and Russell Westbrook were buddies. They didn't get it done. And then he went to the Clippers. They didn't get, Kawhi Leonard recruited him there. They didn't get it done. So why would he get it done going to the Sixers? But you mentioned the Sixers. Joel Embiid's out the rest of the year with an injury. They got to rebuild there. I mean, Embiid could come back next season healthy, but, their window is closed as far as, a championship goes. Yeah, they could get Embiid and maybe go to the playoffs next year at most.
They got the 6th pick. They got a 6th pick, so it's gonna figure out. It's gonna be very important because right now Maxey, McCain, Grimes, and a top 6 pick is what they're going to be basically looking at as far as.
Well, I don't know. The draft order hasn't been set yet because the season's not over.
They're saying they're going to be in the top 6. That's what they're saying. They're going to be in the top 6 for picks for where they are today.
I don't know what order, and with the lottery balls, you don't know what's there. And this, the NBA isn't the NFL. If you get the 6th overall pick in the NFL, you're going to get a high impact player. In the NBA, somehow, it's a little more hit and miss, unless you get the first 2 picks.
Yes.
And I think the Sixers need to move on from Joel Embiid.
I do too.
Best possible deal.
Too.
And there's some team that's going to want to roll the dice with Embiid, change their culture. They're going to need to take a big gamble, and they would be willing to give up a lot to get him.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of Zion with all these injuries, but he's put up more stats than what Zion has. Zion is, came into the league. He's stayed relatively healthy as of late, but those first couple of seasons, we were just like, okay, why is he still on this team? But, looks like he's had another injury as of 15 hours ago. Wow, I guess I spoke to
Zion again?
Yes. It's saying NBA fans react to Zion Williamson injury news as of 15 hours ago. He got injured against the Pistons of all teams. So
getting injured because it's one of those things, okay, but if his conditioning isn't what it should be, I mean, you got to move on from him. That means he's beyond hope at this
He put up
point.
30 points, though. He put up 30
He's
points.
a great player, and I was going to
And they lost by 40.
Yep, they lost. So, yeah, he needed 10 more points, 30 more points.
Someone has got to score points. So there's always going to be one player on every team, no matter how bad they are, with who we're going to think is good. Oh, they got 28 points. Well, someone's got to get the darn points. It doesn't mean to play as much,
Yeah, they said he's questionable for today's game. He's had a back injury now. I don't know. Striller, what are your thoughts on that? Do you follow Zion? I mean, it's just a lot, seemingly.
Well, I'm not, and J Train, no offense, but I'm not following the New Orleans Pelicans anyway. They're eliminated from playoff contention, so they're 19 and 52. So who cares? I mean, Zion's not obviously making a difference on their team to get in the playoffs, and him being oft injured is really not helping them at all. So I think it's time. I think you're right. With just as Embiid, we should move on with. They should move on with another player.
But what about this? If you're the Sixers, do you trade Embiid to the Pelicans for Zion and 2 number 1 draft picks? That might be done. Players that both get injured, Embiid and Zion, even though Zion gets injured a little more.
No.
And he was the number 1 pick.
I think it's a trade-off, to tell you the truth, because both of them get injured. You're not going to have either one of them for most of this. That's just, unfortunately, they're great players when they're healthy. it's just I always say this: availability is the best ability. If you're not there, it doesn't make a difference. How good you play when you're there. Well, you might win you might win that organization 10 games, but then you have the other 72 to play. So what's the point in trading both of them for each other? And especially for two. Hey, not
They
for two
all
number
fit.
ones.
They all fit. It's like two negatives. They all fit.
Yeah, it's basically what it is. It's just Embiid's older.
Yep, Jack made a good point because Zion is only 24 years old. It comes down to conditioning. He was the number 1 pick in 2019. We are in 2025, and I kid you not, every season we've heard about him being injured every single season, even when he was at Duke, ever since he had that foot blowout with his shoe or whatever. He lost some weight, but it comes down to condition. They're saying a lot of analysts, this is coming out from Sports Illustrated 15 hours ago, a lot of analysts are starting to question his conditioning in the past, speculating that this is what's leading up to his injury-plagued seasons with an S on the end. This year, the former number 1 overall pick missed 27 straight games with a hamstring injury, and NBA fans are just starting to be really concerned, especially in New Orleans, because 27 games in a row, and now you have a back injury that has you questionable for today, and you're only 24. What is going on?
You're only 24. You mentioned the age factor. That's so important, like you mentioned in any deal. Like you take the Luka deal for Anthony Davis. You know what I didn't like about that deal if I'm Dallas? You're getting a player 6 years older. So, and if you want to prorate it, you're getting 6 less seasons. That guy's going to produce for you. Anthony Davis had an injury history, but so did Luka. Okay, when you think of it, but again, you're trading a 25-year-old for a 31-year-old if you're Dallas, and that's the part of the deal I didn't like because when both of them are healthy, Anthony Davis and Luka are basically a wash. I mean, you could argue that Luka's a little bit better, but I could argue Anthony Davis could have a little more of an impact on the game. The quality is basically the same, even though Luka's was a tremendous fan favorite in Dallas. But it's the age factor that you brought up. It's important.
Age is important because, just the normal age with a non-athletic, professional athletic body, age is a different way from an athlete's body. And these athletes, that's your job. You literally have to condition 24/7. Everything you eat, everything you think, everything you move, everything about you has to be surrounded and catered to and cultivated based on your professional job with the NBA. And one thing, I don't know if it's what he's eating. I don't know. Sometimes it could be the mental, whatever it is, because our bodies hold stress as well. It is not happening, the fact that this is every single season. And whenever you start having a player that every season they're injured from the beginning, it does make you start to question the longevity with that organization. Guys, we're going to get ready to wrap it up here. This has been an amazing show. We appreciate all the likes, loves, comment, and engagement. I am Sonia. This is Bestrilla and Jack Hirsch as well. And Keith Engel was on with us earlier. And this has been the Sunday Morning Sports Show. This episode will re-air this afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We wish you all a great week, and please download the Roku app so that you too can be in the know when we are live. Good Sunday to everybody. God bless.
You're watching National Streaming Sports. Over 20 podcasts, 70 shows, and a 3.5-star rating on Roku TV.